Hey everyone, this is part 3 of our read aloud for Diary of an Awesome Friendly Kid. The time Greg played a hilarious prank on me. Oh, I know the last chapter didn't have a lot of Greg in it, but I wanted to mention that story real quick because the Bambi thing totally freaked me out. If you like scary stuff, then you're in luck because this one is pretty scary too. One day, me and Greg were hanging out at my house, and Greg told me he saw on the news that there was a burglar going around breaking into people's homes. Then, he said he had to go home for dinner, and once he left, I started getting scared because my parents weren't around. But here's the thing. I found out later that Greg just pretended to leave. He shut the front door, but then stayed inside my house. He took off his shoes and walked up the stairs super quiet so I couldn't hear him. Then he started stomping around real loud upstairs. At first, I thought it was the ghost of Bambi all over again. Then I realized it was probably that burglar Greg told me about, and I almost peed my pants for the second time in this biography. I heard footsteps coming down the stairs, and I ran into the garage to hide from the burglar. It was pitch black in the garage, but I didn't want to make a move until I was sure that guy was gone. Then all of a sudden, the door to the garage opened real slow, and I knew the burglar was going to get me if I didn't do something. So I whacked him in the face with my dad's tennis racket and made a run for it. Then I ran out the front door and went to Mrs. Monroe's house next door to tell her to call the cops. But then Greg came out of my house, and that's when I found out the whole thing was just one of his hilarious pranks. Greg was mad at me for 2 whole weeks, and he said I should have known from the way the footsteps sounded that it was him and not a burglar. I guess he got a pretty good point about that. He's got a pretty good point about that since he is always playing wacky pranks on me, so I feel kind of bad about whacking him with a tennis racket. But not really. Another time Greg got mad at me. Okay, that last story made me remember another time Greg got mad at me. Me and Greg were walking home from school a few months ago, and there were slugs everywhere because it just rained the night before. And whenever there are slugs lying around, Greg chases me with one. I guess it's pretty funny if you think about it, but it's never that funny when it's happening. Luckily, I am really fast when someone is chasing me with a slug, so I got away from Greg by climbing up on the big rock in Mr. Yee's front yard. Greg tried to get me to climb down, but I stayed right where I was. If you come down, I probably won't make you eat this slug. Greg tried to fling the slug at me, but he lost his balance and almost fell in a giant puddle in front of the rock. He was stuck, and I felt bad for him because he is my best friend after all. I got down from the rock and tried to help Greg. He told me to pull him back up on his feet, but I guess I heard him wrong. I grabbed him by his feet, and that turned out to be a pretty dumb move. I didn't know what Greg was going to do once he got out of that puddle, but I didn't want to stick around to find out. So I ran to my house and locked myself in my room and didn't come out until Greg got called home for dinner. The next day, Greg said he was going to get me back when I least expect it. I just hope Greg forgets because when it comes to paybacks, he's got a good imagination. The time when Greg created a special award just for me. Okay, the last 2 chapters were about times Greg got mad at me, but this chapter is the total opposite. This one's about the time when I did something Greg thought was really awesome, so then he did something really awesome for me. Anyway, this one Saturday last fall, me and Greg were supposed to hang out at my house, but he said he couldn't because he had to clean his garage. Then he said if I came and helped him, we'd be done twice as quick. But I said, no thanks, I'll wait. Then Greg said if I helped him, he'd give me half of his Halloween candy. Well, that was a really big deal to me because my parents went through all my candy on Halloween night and they barely let me keep anything. 3 pieces of candy is plenty, Rowley. But I knew Greg still had a ton of candy because his parents don't make him throw out anything. So I told him, okay, I'll be right over. Cleaning Greg's garage was hard work, and it took like 3 hours. After we were done, Greg said, "Okay, now let's go hang out at your place." I said, "Hey, what about that candy?" And Greg said, "Oh yeah, I forgot." But I knew that was going to happen because whenever Greg owes me stuff, he forgets. We went up to Greg's room and he got his bag of candy out of the closet. But when he emptied out the bag, it was almost all wrappers. The only thing left were 3 Jawbreakers and a little box of raisins. I told Greg he promised me a ton of candy, and he said he only promised half. Then he said a deal's a deal, and he gave me a Jawbreaker and the box of raisins. I told Greg I was going to tell his mom, and then Greg got real worried because he said his mom would be mad at him if she found out he ate all his Halloween candy already. Greg said he was going to give me something way better than candy, and he got out a piece of paper and a pencil and started drawing at his desk. When Greg was done, he handed me the piece of paper, and here's what was on it: Good Boy Award. Greg said Good Boy Awards are super rare, and you have to do something really awesome to get one. He said I was extra lucky because this was the first ever Good Boy Award he'd ever given out, and it was going to be worth a lot of money. Well, I know Greg was just trying to get out of giving me the candy he owed me, so I tried to act like I thought this Good Boy Award thing was dumb, but somehow Greg could tell I thought it was kind of cool. Well, that was only the first Good Boy Award, but I got a lot more. For the next few weeks, Greg made me one every time I did something awesome for him. After a while, I had a ton of Good Boy Awards, and I kept them in a binder in clear plastic sheets so they wouldn't get messed up. But then I started to feel like maybe my Good Boy Awards weren't that rare anymore since I had so many of them. Plus, Greg was making the new ones a lot quicker than he made that first one, and they didn't seem all that special. Good Boy Award. Yay. So one time when Greg called and asked me to come down and help him rake his yard, I told him I couldn't because I had homework. And Greg said, "That's too bad," because he came up with a totally new kind of Good Boy Award, and he was sad I wasn't going to get to see it. I was like, "Well, at least tell me about it." And Greg said he couldn't because it was top secret and he didn't want to ruin the surprise. Then he said he was going to call Scotty Douglas and see if he wanted to help rake the yard. And I said, "Okay, I'll be right over." Well, I wish I knew we had to rake the front yard and the back because it was a lot of work. Plus, I had to do it myself because Greg was busy making that new award. When I was finally done, Greg gave me my award, and I've got to say, it was even more awesome than I thought it would be. This new one was called a Super Good Boy Award. Greg said one Super Good Boy Award was worth 50 regular Good Boy Awards, and I could totally see why. In the next few weeks, I earned a bunch of Super Good Boy Awards, but after a while, even those didn't seem all that special. Besides, I was spending a lot of time doing stuff for Greg, and I wasn't getting my own chores done. But every time I told Greg I didn't need any more Good Boy Awards, he'd come up with something new, and then I'd have to have that. After a while, I had so many awards that my binder was stuffed, and I couldn't fit new ones in. So I told Greg I wasn't going to try to earn any more no matter what. But Greg said that's okay because he made up a whole new system and I should probably just recycle my old awards. I was pretty mad because I worked hard for those awards and now Greg said they were totally worthless. But I was still curious about this new system, so I asked him about it. Greg said the new idea was called Lil Goodies, and it was a point system and there wasn't any paper involved. Greg said that every time I did something nice for him, I'd get a little goodie point. And once I got 50 little goodies, I'd get a fantastic prize. I was like, "Okay, what's the prize?" And Greg said he couldn't tell me, but it was under a sheet in his bedroom. Well, I couldn't figure out what was under that sheet, but I could guess, and a lot of my guesses were things I really wanted. So I spent about a month doing lots of things for Greg, and he gave me a little goodie point each time, like he promised. Eventually, I got to 50 little goodies, and I told Greg I was ready to turn them in for that fantastic prize. But Greg told me that since it was the first day of the month, my little goodie total got reset back to 0. And I said, "Well, you never told me about that rule." And he said, "Well, you never asked." I was really mad, and I yanked the sheet off the fantastic prize so I could see what it was. But guess what? It was a laundry basket filled with dirty clothes. I told Greg he was a crummy friend for making me do all that work for a phony prize. But he said the laundry thing was just a test to see if I'd peek, and that I failed the test. Then he said the real prize was locked in the basement, and that now I was going to have to earn 100 little goodies to get it. All I can say is I'm not a fool. I'm going to take my time earning those little goodies. So if Greg thinks I'm in a rush to get that fantastic prize, he's going to be disappointed. And we will leave off there. Part 4 will start with the time I found out Greg is a lousy study partner. Hope you're all having a good day.